Thank you very much. Again, Noelani DeBeta from Climate Alliance. We're one of the city networks in Europe. There's about 5 of us, and we cover 2,000 local authorities. So they're members of Climate Alliance that are explicitly trying to adapt to climate change in their small municipalities from 3,000 members to or from 3,000 inhabitants to major cities like, say, Munich or The Hague. And so we've been working a lot at the local level with one-stop shops for a long time. And Climate Alliance as a network has several projects that we are part of consortiums to really work on the one-stop shop issue. I just want to say that, you know, between the EED, the Energy Efficiency Directive, and the EPBD, you have some language that's sort of quite top-down, saying member states need to ensure building owners are invited to a one-stop shop to receive renovation advice once their building drops below level C. And I'm imagining for all of us, if you were to receive a letter from the federal government saying, you know, your building kind of sucks now, so you better do something about it, and we invite you to go talk to a one-stop shop. It's sort of a passive way. And so one of the main things that we've seen in some of our local one-stop shop campaigning and our projects is the real, of those 6 issues that were pointed out very eloquently by Natasha, awareness raising is one of the biggest ones. We can set up all these one-stop shops and have them statically placed or online, but how do you get citizens to actually bother? So we are running a campaign called the Energy Caravan. It was initiated in Germany, and initially we actually had, it's called the Energy Caravan with a symbol of camels. So we actually hired, with animal safety, some camels to go door to door to some citizens in a small town in Germany and knock on the door with an energy advisor and say, hi, you know, can we just have a friendly conversation with you about what might be going on there with this animal standing in the front lawn of the street? It was hugely successful, and the Energy Caravan has now extended, without the camels, by the way, to hundreds of campaign interventions that are led by local authorities. So we help the local authority in a local constituency which knows their own citizens, bring the one-stop shop, like a mobile one-stop shop, to the citizens directly. They haven't asked for it. And the way to build that trust, and I say this to member states, is work with your local authorities, because if the mayor writes a personalized letter signed by the mayor and sends it to all the citizens, let's say 400 citizens, they feel, oh, wow, you know, I trust, I know who my mayor is. I'm at that local level. It's not the government saying, oh, your building is, you know, dead. Please do something about it. But the mayor invites you to understand that there's this service available and that one-stop shops can solve issues for you with the different subsidies and different programs. Obviously, the financing needs to be there. But let me just add that what we've seen is, you know, with the renovation wave, you have the doubling. The EU has this target of doubling renovation from 1% to 2%. With the Energy Caravan, when it goes through a community, we have a response rate of 25%. So 100 households out of 400, let's say, sign up for an initial consultation, and someone goes there. And from that, we find that 82%, so 82 of those 100 households, have never had an energy consultant come to their house and see what they could do to make this facade better, or the roof, or maybe triple pane windows or solar panels, whatever it is, heat pumps, etc. And so from that, they're inspired. There's a high rate of people saying, thank you very much for reaching out to us. And from that, we see time and time again in the 65 local authorities, just in this one region in Germany, we had a success rate of up to 15% of renovations happening in private residential homes. So that blows the water off of this 2% that the EU tries to do. And so we then talked to the national government of Luxembourg, and they said, why not? Because their structure is different than Germany with the Länder and the federal state. And Luxembourg ran it, and wow, again, renovation rates went way up. Now, we also represent the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub in Climate Alliance. We were one of the main consortium running the Commission's Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. So we brought that angle in too, is how do you deal with vulnerable households, And anyway, I think I'll leave it at that, but just so if you want to talk more with me afterwards about that kind of program, it's really about connecting those one-stop shops as complementary to the right kind of campaigns that can build consensus among the population and find ways to actually move forward with this. And so, yeah, thank you very
Thank you very much indeed. I think it's we speak the same language, being representatives of local government, and I think it's worth emphasizing that this is the tier that is closest to the citizens, and therefore is really an ideally placed actor to drive on the ground renovation uptake. So yeah, it's great that we've also now found out that you know, camels are a great way to you know, enhance our conversion rates in renovation activity. So a lot of learnings there already. Thank you so much. Great. Over to Valentina from GNE Finance. I think this is finance is a topic that has cropped up so many times today, and it will continue to crop up now also against the backdrop of the EPBD. Perhaps you would like to start with a quick introduction and an intervention on your part.
This one. Yeah. So yeah, good afternoon. I am Valentina Cabal. I am representing GNE Finance, and we are part of the Save the Homes project. We are representing the financing stakeholders, but it's important to mention that we from GNE Finance, we also have like an important track record in setting up one-stop shops in several countries in Europe, and we have there some experience and normal issues and where do normally the one-stop shops and the integrated home renovation services face like the most issues. And I do think that from a financing point of view and from integrated home renovation services providers' point of view, we come to a same point, and it's how to increase the demand for energy efficiency renovations. It all starts with creating awareness, but after creating awareness, it's important to be able to provide a good service, able to create trust in the user, that it's able to fully accompany the homeowner through all the process. Relating to what Christoph was mentioning this morning, if you think about the wedding, it's not only about letting the groom and the bride about what they can do with the wedding. It's about having the wedding done, and it's the same with energy efficiency renovation. So it's important that we create awareness, but that we actually can start increasing the actual demand, because if we think from a financial point of view, banking sector and the financial institutions, they won't start providing tailor-made solutions if they don't see like a good a pool of projects that like actually justifies putting in there like these type of services. But also there's no reason on creating awareness if then homeowners during the renovation journey, they won't find like a complete service that will actually accompany them through all the journey. And I do think there that we need to think about incentivizing the one-stop shops provided by public authorities, that it's already there in the recast of the EPBD, but also to increase the services provided by private companies, because we all know that public entities, they have a lot of restrictions, legal restrictions when trying to provide the services, and they can go until one point, but after that they cannot. And there's where private actors need to come in and be able to fully accompany the homeowners. Yeah, I think that will be.
Thanks so much. Chicken and egg situation comes to mind in terms of market readiness and finance, perhaps not developing products because other things are lacking, and other things are lacking because the market is not ready, and so we're in a bit of a tricky spot here. Perhaps. Well, this might be adding further barriers to the discussion, diving into the construction side of things. Spiros, perhaps you would like to take the floor and share with us your perspective and a short introduction of yourself, of course.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I'm Spiros Mathiodakis. I represent here the European Builders Confederation, which is a European-level organization representing associations of SMEs and crafts of the construction sector. It's a mouthful, but it's actually, we represent quite an important part of the economy because SMEs in construction make up more than 99.9% of the companies. And they represent around 80% of the turnover of the entire construction sector. So it's important to include construction SMEs in the process. And we already heard some very interesting thoughts. First, in the presentation of Natasha, on which I think I would change a couple of commas maybe, but not much more. It's we're very much aligned with what was shown. It was also interesting to hear the point on the camels, because it's extremely important, and I think this is one of the first elements. We need to actually reach people and to show them that there can be something better to come out from their buildings. But before that, I think we would place a couple of elements from our point of view. The first one, and we tend to go over this a bit fast, but it's not a given. It's the aspect of financing. We have now a new EPBD, and as was shown by Natasha, it's very important that we have a dedicated article on one-stop shops and many other provisions referring to them. But we especially now have a very clear framework. There's also the mentions in the EED about one-stop shops. But then what? Now it's in the law. It will have to be implemented. It will have to be scattered throughout the territory, which is very important. But how do we fund the one-stop shops themselves is one question, and especially how do we fund them in the long run so that they continue operating when the initial kick-off funding fades away. And of course, how do we finance, and more importantly, the actual renovations. And now we have a new EPBD that has come with a very long part on financing that says very little things concretely. And this is something that we are concerned about, because we know that also at member state level in many countries, the funding for renovations is already running out. And we have a few years left until the new MFF, so we are a bit concerned. Then the second point that I would like to raise is the point of skills, which for us is very important. So, and this is also linked to the technical barriers and the technical challenges that were also mentioned. So we have in general in the construction sector a problem of lack of skills. We have a lack of skilled workforce. But beyond that, we think that it's very important that within the one-stop shops, as was very correctly mentioned, we have all the resources, all the people, all the skilled people that will deliver all the solutions throughout the renovation process and on all the aspects that can be required. And these are very important points. I think I share Natasha's thinking on the need to have a service that doesn't have profit at its heart. I'm not sure I would advocate for a strictly public service, but public interest is at the core of this tool of one-stop shops in the way that it's now included in legislation. So I think it's very important that especially in order to safeguard the element of trust, that we have reliable information that is not biased towards, for example, a specific product or a few specific products or a specific technology, but that is really adapted to each individual building, which is usually in Europe unique, and which needs specific care in order to be renovated to the best degree possible. So a few initial thoughts. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I hear a lot of alignment, which is great. So we won't be having any fist fights here on the panel today, which is nice. But also thank you for expanding on certain points from the SME perspective, which I think are going to feed back into the policy recommendations as well. So this is really very, very valuable insights that you've shared. Thank you so much. With that, I would like to shine the light on the consumer's point of view. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Guillaume, please.
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Guillaume Joly from BEUC, the European Consumer Organization. Consumers that are, as you know, also the decision makers in the residential sector of undertaking a retrofit project or not. Several of our members actually implemented one-stop shops where they welcome the questions and the quest for advice from the households. So it's on a different scale from general information to more in-depth support, depending on the members of BEUC. What we advocate for, because I heard it was in the law, well, it's potentially in the directive now, it's in the EED, the one-stop shops, but the EPBD still has to be fully and formally voted and then transposed. We still have quite a fight, I would say, at the national level to see all the positive points within the directives being taken on board of the national laws. And still to be seen how much the funding from the national level will trickle down to the local authorities. So this is not a done deal, I would say. For the one-stop shop rollout, we are definitely supportive of public funding for sure from the consumer side. And we mentioned also skilled workforce. It's not only a workforce that needs to be skilled, but it's also being able to have one point of contact. As consumers, we think it's easier if you get one person having to deal from the front office with your file, and then the back office is where all the complexity happens, because it's going to stay complex. You don't want to be too optimistic on this, but it needs to be, this complexity needs to be taken off the plate of consumers. Which means, for example, for the financing side, that we do need to see the design and implementation of innovative public financing. We need more instruments. We need guarantee funds. We need a revolving fund, because you need to tackle the questions of upfront costs for the low income. If you wait for the grants to be disbursed once the works are completed, well, nothing will happen, basically, for the low income. So we do need to have a blending strategy of public and private financing. On the questions related to the SMEs and the installers, you will be happy to hear that we call for support for these actors as well, not only for consumers in one-stop shop, but also for accredited installers, because we think that once the installers are trained and skilled up, then the last thing you want to see is them, well, actually doing as consumers, finding in some paperwork all the time, or at least 30% of the time. So we call for one-stop shop to mirror the support for installers. And I wanted to also talk about something we think is very important. It's minimum energy performance standards that have to be implemented via the one-stop shops. It's in the EED, the voted directive. So we are trustful that their design will be well thought through and will address the private transit sector, for example, where you have the most in need consumers for support and for energy retrofit. And I'll stop here.
Great, thank you so much. Very interesting comments. Also, we see finance being highlighted over and over again, but also the tenant-landlord dilemma. These kind of tricky questions when we get into the detail, and of course demand as well as supply side that needs to be tackled. Lots of food for thought. Thank you so much. With that, I would like to go to the very end of the row of our panel here and give the floor to Julien from Housing Europe.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Housing Europe is the European Social Housing Federation, and we represent 11% of the housing stock in Europe as compared to the 70% of homeowners. So you may wonder why we are speaking now about something which is more for homeowners. Well, the answer is that social housing operators have a role to play in setting up one-stop shops. First of all, in general, just a reminder that we are quite well placed as a social housing operators in this decarbonization challenges we all face. On average, social housing building is 10 to 30% more energy efficient in Europe. Why? Well, we have three things that the homeowners usually do not have. First, we have the scale. We have a lot of housing units, so it helped, of course, in your discussion with the supply chain. Secondly, we have the funding. And indeed, although we can certainly see that there's a lack of funding for affordable housing in Europe, we still have more funding than the homeowners. And thirdly, we have a privileged relationship with the tenants, the residents. And actually, in our sector, we do not have the landlord-tenant dilemma because it is in the interest of the social housing operators to make sure that the building is in the best quality possible. So thanks to that, we are indeed running ahead in terms of the decarbonization process and the fair energy transition. But it's not enough, of course. So we need indeed to reach out to the 70% of homeowners in Europe. And this is where, indeed, as I said, we have a role to play in setting up one-stop shop, at least at two levels. First of all, social housing operators, as you may know in your countries, they can act as a building manager on behalf of a co-ownership structure who is struggling to get the funding and the expertise to do the renovation. And we see that quite often in France, for instance. So there's a role as a, we take the role of the co-ownership association and we work on their behalf, usually because the local authorities have asked the social housing operator to do so. And secondly, social housing organization can be a facilitator to create the one-stop shop. And I'll give you an example from Spain. We've been involved in a great project called Open Gela in Bilbao. And there in Bilbao, the Basque government and the local public housing company, they worked together to set up a one-stop shop in one of the neighborhoods in Bilbao, quite deprived neighborhood. The goal was to create a physical place where people can come and decide about what kind of renovation they would undergo, knowing that in Spain you may know that in buildings you have a quite strong level of mixed tenure. So you may have a building with a third of social housing tenants and two-thirds of homeowners. This is because in Spain, when you build for social housing, it's usually to sell to the people afterwards. So we had this situation in Bilbao of this mixed tenure. And so the social housing organization Bilbao has basically act as a facilitator between the people, the residents, and a group of companies. The important point to make is that they were not obliged to use public procurement rules because you had this mix of tenure, so a lot of private homeowners, and yet they decided to have a very high quality procurement procedure to make sure that the winning company would be of the high quality. And so they managed to renovate several buildings in Bilbao thanks to that. But not only the buildings, but also some common places where they installed PV panels, thanks to the grants given by the Basque government. So this was a really good example of what social housing operators can do on behalf and with the homeowners sector. And this is important to bear in mind, particularly in countries where you have a lot of homeowners, more than 90% in Eastern Europe. So you have to have something that helps to reach out in a structured way, in a collective way. And this project, OpenGela, and other projects, similar projects, had really three great outcomes, and I will finish with this. First of all, it was great in terms of community building. As I said, the long-term relationship, a privileged relationship with tenants was crucial, but the fact that we could reach out to homeowners was also a great way to make people feel belonging to the same community, regardless of your status in a way, whether you are tenants or homeowners. Secondly, the environmental and technical expertise was key, because there was this knowledge of the procurement process I mentioned earlier, but also because there was this handling of great tools to choose the right renovation strategies. And I think Remodulus is an example of the importance of decision-making tools. What is the right renovation that we need to go for? It is important to have scenario planning tools, also when we discuss with the homeowners, to help them understand, okay, why this is the best one for you, also looking at cost, obviously. And lastly, was a great example of assessment of the socioeconomic impact of the renovation for the local authorities. Very often we lack this general view about what are the overall impact in terms of employment, health, and not only in terms of CO2 reductions. At the end of the day, CO2 reductions are, of course, what we all have in mind, but it is probably the less tangible things for people. So we need to really look at other indicators. Even when we go for renovation, we need to look at things like, indeed, of course, savings in terms of cost, but improvement of indoor air quality and creation of jobs at the local level. So this is an example of the role of socializing that socializing operators can have for one-stop shop. And indeed, because of the magnitude of the challenge that we have ahead, we expect socializing operators to be called into action, not only to renovate their stock, but also to help the homeowners. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would have a lot to respond on many things, generally echoing and supporting what you've just said. I think it's also great that you added on top of things that have already been mentioned that I'm sure resonate with all of us. Good practices being really important to have these flagships and that really serve as great replicators, basically. So we lack the time to delve further right now, but thank you so much. I wanted to give the floor to Natasha once more. Earlier on, she was wearing her Save the Homes hat. Now, please meet Natasha wearing the UIPI hat. So please,
thank you.
A short statement
Thank
from
you.
your side.
So as UIPI, we are the International Union of Property Owners, where we, of course, represent owner-occupiers, but private landlords as well. So jointly, we represent more or less 5 million property owners across Europe, which own respectively 25 million dwellings, more or less from the information that we have from our 31 national member associations that we are composed of. So, of course, property owners, they absolutely need guidance, whether this is Green Deal in general, Fit for 55 package, and all the requirements that come with it, EPBD in particular, that has been mentioned thoroughly today. Property owners really need the assistance, not only financial, of course, which is crucial, but also technical in terms of support and really being accompanied throughout the customer, as customers throughout the renovation journey. Here, of course, in a way, we can play a dual role because as property owners, as has been mentioned several times, we are the key target group of the one-stop shop. So we are the end users. So our feedback, our needs can indeed further help to develop the one-stop shops. As we have seen, the local needs and tailor-based approach is very important in this regard. But also maybe most importantly in terms of structure and sustainability of one-stop shops. Once again, I would really like to mention that national property owners associations can be actively involved and contribute to one-stop shops in that particular regard through collaboration and partnerships with the national levels of authority. That can further on be developed as private or public business models. So in this way, national associations of property owners can provide a neutral standpoint and really be this neutral access points that would be needed in any type of one-stop shop model, let's say, in order to ensure that we, at the end of the day, have this consumer trust and neutrality that is required, as we have seen from different stakeholders in terms of the successful deployment. So thank you. I will stop here. Of course, many more things to say, but
Indeed, yeah, we should have allocated a few more hours for this discussion because we all have very, I would say, there's a lot of informed wisdom here and on the ground experience with project implementation. So this conversation could go a lot longer. Last but certainly not least, Christoph, you've been with us the whole day. Thank you so much for taking part and being engaged. We've now heard from a lot of key stakeholder groups, and perhaps you having given the framing presentation that kicked us off this morning, would you like to provide some reflections on what you've heard right now, maybe also picking up things that you've heard during the day, and please feel free to kick the ball back into our stakeholders' court on certain subjects.
Okay, so it's not an easy role that you asked me to play. There are so many things that have been said that I don't really know how to structure my reaction to it. And indeed, I mean, maybe to start with, I was never a big fan of the one-stop shop term. Actually, I think it's semantically very poor and can mean more or less anything depending on who you are talking to. But I think it's still important that it is in the directive EPBD and the EED because it helps start a discussion on elements that are missing now on the market offer. And at least with this article, we can have this discussion, and we can have the discussion now in Europe and also at member state level. Depending on who you're talking to, that could mean many things. If you talk to public actors, most of them would think that the role of a one-stop shop is to provide information, raise awareness, for instance, and they would likely keep in that role and not enter too much into market activity. Even if you say that, if you consider that it's the role of the one-stop shop, you still have a number of discussion ongoing on how to deliver this awareness rising. Is it using Camel? Is it using something else? Is it adequate everywhere? Maybe Camel are not adequate for Finland. Maybe you could use something else, or maybe it's complicated in Brussels with the traffic and congestion we already have. So you have still already a lot of discussion and still a lot of missing points on the market, because you raise awareness. Maybe you're pushing actually people that were not in movement for energy renovation, and you still have a number of homeowners that were willing to do something and were engaged in a renovation process that still don't find the solution from the market, and are still left alone with all the decisions that are to be taken, and all the renovation process, the financing, the reception of work, monitoring of quality, and so on. So maybe there is still a need, and maybe it's a one-stop shop also to do that. But to do that, that means entering in market activities, which a number of consequences to it. Maybe it's not fully a privately, or maybe not fully a publicly driven initiative. Maybe it's some sort of partnership, and to which extent. If it's a privately driven initiative, that they will normally focus on the ones that are doing the renovation and spend most of the time with them. So is it fair to ask them to also raise awareness, or is it some kind of a combination? And if it's a combination, then it's not so much of a one-stop shop. It's at least two windows shop, or maybe several more windows would be needed. So the term is not fine, but I think starting the discussion is indeed important. I've noted so many things, but I understand that there is a gray zone on what a public actor can or cannot do. Clearly, are they allowed to get into market activities, and under which conditions? I think this is something that the Commission and at EU level we could work on and try to clarify where do they best fit, and to which extent, at which point should they rather encourage private initiatives and so on. That's, I think, one of the important discussions. The toolbox for one-stop shop that was mentioned by I think the Save the Home Act was, or maybe it was UAPI, and I think it's needed. It's something that we really push forward from our project to communicate on what they are doing, propose tools, solutions. The EU Peers project, for which Climate Alliance is actually a coordinator, the main purpose is actually that, to propose solutions and so on. There will be guidance note accompanying the directive, also published by the Commission, on what could one-stop shop means and the different example of implementation, but that many things will be left for member states to define and implement concretely. And maybe again, the ways to implement would be different from Finland to Spain, and that's perfectly fine. There will also be probably a big point on the sustainability of it. It's not, it's useless actually to start a one-stop shop without having in mind to keep operating until we have refurbished all the building stock, so for at least 30 years and probably more. So the long-term viability is extremely important. The use of subsidies can be maybe shifted from subsidizing energy efficiency measures towards subsidizing support to homeowners. That could be an option. Maybe homeowners could also pay for the services. For the time being, they are quite reluctant to do so, but also because they don't understand what it is. If the value of these services was better recognized, such as an architect service and so on, maybe there could be a willingness to pay for it. Maybe there could be some financial engineering to avoid homeowners to pay upfront for these costs and have this kind of merge into the whole financing of it. So many options. So one-stop shop is not a good term, but a good discussion to have. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that intervention as well. Great. I think finance is something we could delve into further, but I wanted to ask into the panel the one element of the recast EPBD being the worst performing buildings. Would be interesting to hear your perspectives on that element of the EPBD, and how you see the best way forward in addressing the really the weakest in the chain, and ensuring that on the social sustainability side, we know that a lot of worst performing buildings are also so-called natural occurring affordable housing. That's where people often live that are in economically stressed situations. So maybe looking at building renovation out of that lens could be an interesting topic to briefly consider. If anyone would like to take the floor on this. Yes, we have one hand raised.
Yes, thanks. Regarding the worst performing building, starting with what is written up to now in the PBD, we think as consumer organization that it's a bit detrimental to define the worst performing building as up to 43% of your housing stock, because then targeting might be complicated. And also it's crucial to understand the difference between worst performing building and most consuming building, because they might not be the same. And we have a data gap and a gap in information that is still consubstantial of the housing sector for now. So I would like to loop in here the notion you brought with the camels. It's the engagement of people. How do you engage people? It's not enough to communicate. It's not enough to have a one-way informational direction, because it would be instrumental to get some data and information from people themselves. A very interesting tool that is implemented in the US are the energy efficiency building benchmark, where you have a mandatory disclosure of information on the buildings. So you not only have to disclose the information regarding your energy performance certificates, but also of your consumption on a quarterly basis. So of course, it's not the houses that are targeted first, it's the condominiums, the multi-units, and the biggest one. In the US, the cities started with the biggest ones. But that's how you create a dynamic database. That's how you engage with people. They not only have information for themselves, but also for similar buildings. And you, in the same move, you also feed in the different databases and create a better view on what's going on and see the discrepancy between the EPC and the actual consumptions as well of energy and also water, because it could be interesting to have a look at that as well.
Yeah, thank you very much also for highlighting that differentiation between performance and consumption, and also mentioning data. So we have a couple of leads here into which the next intervention could go into. I think data gaps for evidence-based policy making, for strategy development and taking action at all levels of governance is important, but also considering the building performance side, please feel free to jump in if you would like to elaborate on one of these points. If there's no spontaneous
I can add to this in terms of, indeed, as property owners, we fully agree to the fact that we need a clear understanding of the local challenges, meaning that we need data on the building stock and on the different status that the diverse segments of the building stock are currently in. And only once that we have the right data on this can we really choose the right approach and the right pace. And of course, to your previous question before, indeed, whether it's percentages or tackling specific target groups, it is always a challenge. But in this regard, we view this, the political agreement that has been reached in terms of this as a step into the right approach, because previously both the European Commission and the European Parliament wanted to place specific requirements, for instance, based on the levels of the energy performance certificates, while now it is more vague, let's say, and there is flexibility that is granted for the member states. So it is really, at the end of the day, for specific provisions and requirements up to the national authorities to choose the path that is the most adequate in terms of the building stock that they have.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a follow-up here.
No, just some very quick thoughts regarding the minimum energy performance standards. It's I think we're also on this point we're rather on the same line of thinking with Natasha, but I want to also come back to the point that was made by Guillaume a moment ago between the difference between consumption and the performance. And it's true that they're not always the same thing, but it needs also a bit of care when we look at this, because some people don't consume because they can't consume. It's not that, okay, since they don't consume, it's fine, we don't need to intervene there. So I'm not saying that's what was said, but there's always a bit of sensitivity to these issues. And that's also why we were not in favor of the original system that was being proposed on the maps, because it would have targeted individual buildings regardless of everything else, not taking into account the specific situations of the buildings, and it would have put an obligation to renovate that particular building. So I think it's good that there is some flexibility left to the member states to organize this differently. At the same time, it's also good that we have a framework that incentivizes to renovate, because I think if we can do a division of two categories, there is, I would say, the low-hanging fruit first. So it's the people that really don't know that there are options, there are possibilities. They're not informed. The 15% increase that you mentioned earlier is super interesting, because it shows really that there is a large amount of people that would have taken action, because we often say that there are very many things that are difficult, especially when it comes to older people that do not want to renovate, but we see that there is a lot of people who actually want to, if they are well informed. And this is the first part, and then there is people who would not be in a position to, or who just don't want to do it. And the people who are not in a position to, there is really the important part where they need to be accompanied also on the technical level, and here's where one-stop shops are very important, in the financial part, and also be given concrete aid to do it. And that's also why we're not in favor of very, very strict MEPs, because there's no provision on fresh money, to just say it clearly on the MEP. So you put an obligation that is very strict without fresh money for people who are the least well off, who are economically stressed most of the time, because if they weren't, they wouldn't live probably in a property that is in bad condition. So these are all elements that need a bit of sensitivity. And to say it also in the reverse, we would have an interest as construction companies if everybody had to renovate tomorrow morning. But you cannot just do it like this from one moment to the other and without any concrete support. So I think it's very good that we are taking this step by step and also doing it at the same time. So we need to, the EPBD is not completely done yet, by the way, and we have elections ahead, so let's hope it finishes. But then also get to work after implementation, transposition implementation starts.
Yeah, thank